The massive alien ship appeared above Earth without warning. It was bigger than any human-made structure, blocking out the sun over half the planet. Admiral Daewon Kim stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, humanity's largest warship, and stared at the screens showing the vessel. He had fought in 3 wars and commanded fleets across a dozen star systems. But he had never seen anything like this. A signal came through. The alien voice was calm and polite. It spoke perfect English, though the translator gave it a strange echo. The message was simple. Humanity had 48 hours to surrender. Daewon listened to the entire message without interruption. The alien introduced himself as Envoy Kalseth, a representative of something called the Hegemony Council. He explained that humanity had reached a dangerous level of expansion. Earth controlled 42 star systems now. That was too many for an unsupervised species. The galaxy had rules. There was a system. Every civilization had to follow it. The system was called the Dominion Accord. It was simple. When a species grew too powerful, they had to submit to hegemony oversight. They would keep their planets and their people, but the hegemony would control their military, their expansion, and their major decisions. It was for everyone's safety. It prevented wars. It maintained peace. Kalseth showed holographic records of hundreds of other species who had accepted this deal. They all seemed happy. They had prosperity and security. Some had been under hegemony control for thousands of years. The envoy made it sound reasonable. He made it sound like the only logical choice. Then he explained the alternative. If humanity refused, the hegemony would destroy them. Complete extinction. Every human colony would be eliminated. Earth itself would be rendered uninhabitable. This was not a threat, Kalseth explained. This was simply procedure. This was how the galaxy maintained order. Daewon called an emergency meeting. Earth's leaders gathered via hologram in the Indomitable's conference room. President Park was there, along with representatives from every major colony. Ambassador Jinwoo Lee joined from the Galactic Assembly Station. Dr. Hana Park, the chief xenolinguist, attended to provide analysis. Jinwoo spoke first. He believed they should accept. He had spent years building relationships with alien species. He understood galactic politics. The hegemony was too powerful to fight. Submission was not ideal, but it was survival. They could negotiate good terms. They could protect human culture and rights within the system. Others agreed. The military advisors showed projections. The hegemony fleet surrounding Earth contained over 5,000 ships. Humanity had 300 combat vessels total. The math was clear. A war would last days, maybe hours. Billions would die. But Dr. Hana Park raised her hand. She had been studying the historical records Kalseth provided. She found something disturbing. She pulled up images of the submitted species, comparing their current culture to historical records from before their submission. The differences were shocking. The Velthari used to have 12 different languages and distinct regional cultures. Now they all spoke one standardized tongue and followed identical customs. The Thorian species once had hundreds of unique art forms. Now they produced only approved styles that looked exactly like hegemony templates. The Nethians had been explorers and inventors. Now they quietly managed their assigned territories and asked permission before trying anything new. Hana explained what she saw. The hegemony did not just control military and politics. They controlled everything. Within 3 generations of submission, every species lost what made them unique. They became copies of each other. They thought the same thoughts, followed the same rules, and never questioned anything. Commander Tae Yang Choi, Daewon's tactical officer, supported Hana's concern. He had been analyzing hegemony military tactics. He noticed something strange. The hegemony never faced real resistance. Every species they encountered accepted the surrender protocol. Why? Not because the hegemony was militarily invincible, but because they made resistance seem impossible. They created a psychological barrier more powerful than any weapon. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what was being discussed. They were not just choosing between freedom and survival. They were choosing whether humanity would continue to exist as humanity or slowly dissolve into something else. Daewon looked around the room. He saw fear in many faces, but he also saw something else. He saw anger. He saw pride. He saw people who had climbed out of Earth's gravity well through determination and courage. He saw descendants of every culture and nation that had ever existed on Earth. People who had survived ice ages and plagues and wars. People who had always found a way forward. The vote was close. 48% wanted to accept the hegemony's terms. 52% voted to refuse. It was almost even. But democracy meant the majority decided. Day One opened a channel to Calseth's ship. The envoy appeared on screen expecting humanity's acceptance. Instead, Day One delivered a different message. He spoke clearly and calmly. He thanked the envoy for his honesty. He acknowledged that humanity understood the consequences. He recognized the hegemony's power and the reality of the situation. Then he said the words that changed everything. "We refuse." Calseth stared in silence. For several long seconds, he said nothing. Then he spoke, and for the first time his voice showed emotion. Confusion, genuine bewilderment. "You refuse? That is not possible. No species refuses. Not in 12,000 years. You will die. All of you. Do you not understand?" Day One nodded. "We understand perfectly. We choose to remain free. We choose to remain human. And if we must die for that choice, then we die." The transmission ended. The hegemony fleet began moving into attack formation. And across the galaxy, thousands of species who had long ago forgotten the meaning of the word no watched in amazement as humanity prepared for war. Dr. Hannah Park stood in front of the biggest broadcast station on Earth. She was about to do something dangerous, something that might save humanity or doom them faster. She was going to start a war of ideas. The military war was not going well. Humanity had lost 15 colonies in 3 months. The fleet was down to 200 ships. Admiral Day One's tactics bought time, but time was running out. Hannah understood something important. They could not win with weapons alone. They had to attack the hegemony's real source of power. That power was belief. The hegemony ruled because everyone believed they had to. For 12,000 years, every species accepted the surrender protocol because every other species had accepted it. It was just how things were. Nobody questioned it anymore. Hannah wanted to change that. She created something called the Free Thought Network. It was a broadcast system that reached across the entire galaxy. Commander Taeyang's engineers had hidden transmitters on hundreds of planets during their raids. The hegemony could not jam them all. The first broadcast was simple. Hannah appeared on screen and spoke directly to the galaxy. Her message was not complicated. She told stories. She told the story of the American Revolution, where farmers and merchants fought the most powerful empire on Earth and won. She told about Gandhi and how India gained freedom through determination and courage. She described the fall of the Berlin Wall, when ordinary people decided they had suffered enough and changed history overnight. She spoke about the Arab Spring, about solidarity in Poland, about every time in human history when people chose freedom over security. Then she asked a simple question. "We refuse because we believe freedom is worth dying for. What do you believe?" The hegemony tried to shut down the broadcast, but it kept reappearing on different channels. They arrested people who watched it, but millions watched anyway. They banned discussion of it, but people discussed it in secret. The response shocked everyone. Messages started coming to Earth from across the galaxy. Most were anonymous. A young Thorian wrote, "I never knew we had a choice." A Velthari teacher said, "I teach my students to obey. Now I wonder what I have done." A Nithian engineer confessed, "My grandparents told stories about before the hegemony. I thought they were myths." Were they real? Ambassador Jinwoo Lee was still at the Galactic Assembly Station. He had remained there despite the war, trying to find diplomatic solutions. Now he saw an opportunity. He began secretly meeting with representatives from other species. Not official meetings. Quiet conversations in private places. He found others who had doubts. One was a Velthari historian named Ixren. She had spent her life studying old records, including some from before the hegemony. She knew things that others had forgotten. She knew that the Dominion Accord was not always the law. There was a time before it. A time when species made their own choices. Ixren gave Jinwoo something precious. Coordinates. The location of the hegemony's central archives. A facility that contained records of every species that had submitted to the surrender protocol. Complete records, including what those species were like before submission and how they changed afterward. Jinwoo sent the information to Admiral Day One. The Admiral saw the potential immediately. Those archives were not just history. They were evidence. Proof of what the hegemony really did. Day One planned the most dangerous mission of the war. A raid deep into hegemony space, not to destroy the archives, to steal them and broadcast everything to the galaxy. Commander Tae Yang volunteered to lead the mission. He took 20 ships, the best crews, and every stealth system humanity had developed. The journey took 3 weeks. They had to avoid hegemony patrols and navigate through controlled space. The archives were guarded, but not heavily. The hegemony never expected anyone to attack them there. Tae Yang's team overwhelmed the defenses quickly. They copied everything. Thousands of years of records, the complete history of hegemony assimilation. Getting out was harder. Hegemony fleets converged on their position. 6 of Tae Yang's 20 ships were destroyed in the escape, but the others made it back to human space with the data intact. Dr. Hannah Park spent 2 days reviewing the archives. What she found was worse than she expected. The records showed systematic cultural destruction. When a species submitted, the hegemony did not just take political control. They rewrote education systems. They banned traditional languages. They replaced native art and music with approved forms. They erased history that contradicted hegemony narratives. Within 3 generations, submitted species forgot who they were. They became cultural ghosts. They looked like their ancestors but had none of the same thoughts, values, or dreams. They were alive but not living. They existed but did not truly belong to themselves. Hannah broadcast it all. Every record, every document, every piece of evidence. She showed the galaxy what submission really meant. Not safety and prosperity, but slow cultural death. The reaction was immediate. Protests erupted on 17 different worlds. Young people from submitted species demanded answers from their elders. Why did you accept this? Why did you not fight? The old ones had no good answers. They had believed the hegemony's promises. They thought they were making the smart choice. The Hegemony Council met an emergency session. They tried to dismiss the archives as human propaganda. But too many people recognized the truth in them. They saw their own lost heritage in those records. Envoy Cal Seth sent a private message to Dr. Hannah Park. His voice was quiet, almost broken. I believed we were saving civilizations from chaos and war. I believed the surrender protocol was merciful. Was I wrong? Hannah replied honestly. You traded our freedom for your version of order. Some of us would rather have freedom and chaos than order and emptiness. You were not evil, but you were wrong. The galaxy was changing. Humanity was still losing the military war. They had fewer ships and fewer resources every day. But they had done something more important. They had planted doubt. And doubt, once planted, was very hard to remove. Admiral Daewon Kim looked at the tactical display and tried not to show his despair. Humanity was dying, slowly but certainly. The war had lasted 9 months. Earth's 42 colonies were down to 17. The fleet was reduced to 120 ships, and many of those were damaged. Supplies were running low. People were exhausted. Every day brought news of another defeat, another sacrifice, another lost position. The ideological war had succeeded beyond hopes. Dozens of species questioned the hegemony openly now. 3 had formally demanded changes to their submission terms. Protests happened daily across multiple worlds, but none of that helped humanity survive. Words and doubt could not stop warships. The Hegemony Council knew they were losing control. The galaxy was waking up from 12,000 years of obedient sleep. If humanity survived much longer, the entire system might collapse. They made a decision. End this quickly. End it so completely that no species would ever dare resist again. They sent the Purification Fleet. Daewon had heard of it in intelligence reports. The Purification Fleet was reserved for one purpose: total species extinction. It was massive, over 3,000 ships with weapons designed not for conquest but for destruction. It had been used only twice before in hegemony history. Both times the target species was erased completely from existence. The fleet was led by Grand Marshal Vokhtar, a hegemony commander known for ruthlessness. He had no interest in negotiations or mercy. He believed humanity was a disease that needed to be cut out before it infected the entire galaxy. Commander Tae Yang analyzed the incoming fleet and delivered his assessment. Humanity could not win a direct battle. The numbers were too overwhelming. If they tried to defend Earth in conventional combat, they would lose in hours. Daewon called another emergency meeting. He presented a plan called Operation Last Light: Evacuate Earth. Evacuate all remaining colonies. Hide the population in deep space in distant systems the hegemony did not know about. Then wage guerrilla war for as long as necessary, maybe forever. It was a survival plan. Humanity would lose Earth, but humans would continue to exist. They would become nomads, pirates, ghosts haunting the galaxy. Never strong enough to win, but never destroyed either. Dr. Hannah Park spoke against it. She understood Daewon's logic, but she believed running now would undo everything they had accomplished. They had inspired the galaxy not just through resistance, but through courage. If humanity ran now, the hegemony would spin the narrative. They would claim humans were cowards who talked big but fled when real danger came. Hannah proposed something different. Make Earth's last stand visible. Broadcast it in real time across every channel in the galaxy. Let every species watch humanity fight to the end. If they must die, die in a way that would never be forgotten. Die in a way that would haunt the hegemony forever. The room was silent. Both plans were terrible. Both meant enormous suffering. One offered survival without dignity. The other offered dignity without survival. Before they could decide, Ambassador Jinwoo Lee entered the room. He was breathing hard. He had just received a message from Ixren, the Velthari historian. She had found something in ancient archives, something that changed everything. The Dominion Accord, the foundation of all hegemony authority, was not what everyone believed. It was not an agreement reached by consensus. The original records from over 12,000 years ago showed the truth. The First Hegemony Council had imposed the accord by force. They conquered the strongest civilizations of that era and made them accept submission. Then they rewrote history. They made it seem like the accord was always inevitable and right. Jinwoo had copies of the original documents, proof that the hegemony's entire foundation was built on lies and coercion. If this information became public, it would not just inspire doubt. It would destroy the hegemony's legitimacy completely. But there was no time to use it. The purification fleet would arrive in 18 hours. Jinwoo had the most devastating weapon humanity could ask for, but no time to deploy it. Daewon made his decision. They would fight. Not run, not hide. Fight right here at Earth, but they would broadcast everything. The battle and Jinwoo's evidence. Let the galaxy see both humanity's courage and the hegemony's corruption at the same time. As Earth prepared for the end, something unexpected happened. Envoy Kalseth appeared at the defense perimeter in a small ship. He requested permission to land. Daewon almost refused, but Taeyang advised letting him through. They had nothing to lose now. Kalseth stood before the human leadership. He looked different. Older somehow, tired, he spoke with difficulty. I cannot participate in this, he said. I believed the hegemony was necessary. I believed we prevented chaos and suffering. But I have watched you. I have seen what we really do. We do not bring peace. We bring emptiness. We do not save civilizations. We hollow them out. Kalseth brought intelligence with him. Complete tactical data on the purification fleet. Its composition, its strategy, its weaknesses. It was not enough to win, but it was enough to hurt them badly. Daewon asked why. Why betray his own people? Why choose humanity's side? Kalseth looked at him with tired eyes. Because I finally understand. You are not the threat, we are. The hegemony is the disease. You are the cure, and if the cure must survive, I must help, even if it costs me everything. He sent one final message to the Hegemony Council. It was broadcast publicly so everyone could hear. I was wrong. They were right. I will stand with them, and when this is over, the galaxy will remember not your power but their courage. The purification fleet was 12 hours away. Earth's defenses were prepared. The broadcasts were ready. Humanity's last battle was about to begin, and the entire galaxy was watching. The purification fleet emerged from hyperspace like a dark cloud covering the stars. 3,000 warships surrounded the Sol system. Their weapons were enough to crack planets. Their orders were simple. Destroy everything. Grand Marshal Vokhtar broadcast his message to Earth and the galaxy. His voice was cold and certain. Humanity would be eliminated. No negotiations would be accepted. No surrender would be permitted. They had defied the hegemony, and now they would pay the ultimate price. Admiral Daewon Kim stood on the bridge of the Indomitable. Around him were the last 120 human warships. Behind them was Earth. Above Earth hung dozens of defense platforms, mining vessels converted to weapons, and civilian ships volunteered by people who refused to evacuate. Daewon opened a channel to the entire fleet. He spoke calmly without drama or false hope. We all know how this ends. The math is clear. We will lose. But we will lose in a way that matters. Today we prove that some things are worth more than survival. Today we show the galaxy what freedom really means. It means standing when logic says you should kneel. It means fighting when wisdom says you should surrender. It means being human when the universe wants you to be something less. Dr. Hannah Park's broadcast network went live. Every screen on every planet in the galaxy showed the same image. Earth, small and blue, surrounded by human ships facing the massive hegemony fleet. Billions of beings across thousands of worlds watched. The hegemony tried to jam the signals but failed. This battle would be seen by everyone. The purification fleet attacked in perfect formation. Thousands of missiles and energy beams lit up space. Human ships scattered, using every trick Commander Tae-Young had taught them. They dodged and weaved. They hid behind asteroids and moons. They fired, retreated, and fired again, but there were too many enemies. Human ships started dying. The Courage exploded when 3 missiles struck her reactor. The Defiance rammed a hegemony cruiser rather than let her damaged hull be captured. The Resolution broke apart under sustained fire from a battleship. Tae-Young used the intelligence from Envoy Kalseth to target specific vulnerabilities. He focused human fire on the hegemony's command ships and supply vessels. Every shot counted. Every enemy destroyed was a small victory. His tactics caused chaos in the enemy formation. The battle raged for 3 hours. Human casualties mounted. The fleet was down to 80 ships, then 60, then 40. Earth's defense platforms fell one by one. The planet's surface began taking fire. Cities reported impacts. Millions died. Then something impossible happened. New ships emerged from hyperspace. Not hegemony ships. Ships from 12 different species. Velthari cruisers, Nithian destroyers, Thorian fighters, even a few vessels from species nobody recognized. Perhaps 200 ships total. They were volunteers. Individuals who had watched the battle and decided they could not just watch anymore. They had stolen ships or commandeered them. They had disobeyed direct orders from their governments. They came knowing they would probably die. A Velthari captain opened a channel to the Indomitable. We stand with humanity. We refuse too. The galaxy watched in shock. For 12,000 years, no species had opposed the hegemony. Now individuals from dozens of civilizations were actively fighting against it. The symbolism was more powerful than the military value. Grand Marshal Vokhtar was enraged. He ordered his fleet to destroy the traitors first. This divided his forces, splitting attention between humanity and the volunteers. It was the opening Tae-Young needed. Tae-Young gathered every remaining human ship for one final attack. They would not win, but they could hurt the enemy badly. They could make Vokhtar pay for his arrogance. The Indomitable led the charge. Daewon aimed directly at Vokhtar's flagship. His ship was already heavily damaged. Shields were down, hull breaches on multiple decks, but the engines still worked. He pushed them to maximum. All crew, this is the Admiral. Abandon ship. Evacuate now. That is an order. Most of the crew obeyed. They rushed to escape pods. But Tae-Young remained on the bridge. So did the navigation officer and the weapons chief. 200 others also refused to leave. Tae-Young looked at Daewon and smiled. With respect, Admiral, I do not take that order. We started this together. We ended together. Daewon nodded. He understood. He opened one final broadcast to Earth. People of Earth, people of the galaxy, remember this moment. Remember that we chose to be free. Remember that we stood when we could have knelt. Remember that we were human until the very end. And let our example give you courage for whatever comes next. The Indomitable smashed into Vokhtar's flagship at full speed. The collision was visible from Earth. 2 massive ships became one ball of fire and debris. Admiral Daewon Kim, Commander Tae-Young Choi, and 2,000 crew members died instantly. So did Grand Marshal Vokhtar and his entire command staff. The Purification Fleet lost its commander. Without Vokhtar's leadership, the ships began operating on standard protocols. But standard protocols did not account for enemies who fought like humans. The fleet coordination fell apart. On Earth, Ambassador Jinwoo Lee watched from the command center. The battle was chaos now. Both sides had taken massive casualties. But Vokhtar's death changed everything. Jinwoo saw an opportunity. He opened a channel to the Purification Fleet. He addressed whoever was now in command. We offer a ceasefire, not surrender. A ceasefire.
Stop this slaughter.
Negotiate with us as equals. Or continue and let the galaxy see what the hegemony truly is. The choice is yours. But the galaxy is watching. Silence. For 3 long hours, the hegemony fleet held position. No more attacks came, but no response either. On hundreds of worlds, protests erupted. Citizens demanded their governments intervene. They demanded the fighting stop. The Hegemony Council met in emergency session. They faced an impossible choice. Continue the battle and risk galaxy-wide rebellion, or negotiate with humans and acknowledge them as equals, destroying 12,000 years of absolute authority. After 4 hours, the Purification Fleet withdrew from the Sol system. No explanation was given. No terms were discussed. They simply left. The battle for Sol was over. Humanity had survived. Barely, but they had survived, and the galaxy would never be the same. The hegemony's withdrawal from Sol created shockwaves across the galaxy. Nobody could remember the last time the hegemony backed down from anything. For 12,000 years they had been absolute. Now they looked uncertain, vulnerable. The 12 species who sent volunteer ships faced immediate consequences. The hegemony demanded they hand over every individual who participated in the battle. Those people would be executed as traitors to galactic order. But something unexpected happened. Citizens refused to cooperate. On the Velthari homeworld, millions marched through the capital. They surrounded the parliament building and refused to leave. Their message was simple: no punishment for the volunteers. If the government wanted those heroes, they would have to arrest everyone. Similar protests erupted on 30 different worlds. Young people who had watched the battle for Sol were no longer willing to accept the old system. They had seen humans choose death over submission. They had seen individuals from their own species stand up. They wanted that same courage for themselves. Dr. Hannah Park traveled to the Galactic Assembly Station. She was now humanity's primary representative since Admiral Daewan's death. She came with Envoy Cal Seth and Ambassador Jinwoo Lee. The Hegemony Council had finally agreed to formal negotiations. The first meeting was tense. The Hegemony Council still insisted humanity must submit to the surrender protocol. They offered better terms than usual. Humanity could keep more autonomy. They would have representation in hegemony affairs. But the basic structure remained. The hegemony would still be in charge. Hannah rejected it immediately. Her voice was firm and clear. We did not sacrifice millions of lives to negotiate better terms for our chains. We fought to end the surrender protocol completely, not just for us, for everyone. The galaxy does not need masters and subjects. It needs equals and partners. Then she presented the evidence Jin Woo and Ix-Ren had discovered. The ancient records proving the Dominion Accord was originally imposed by force. The hegemony's entire authority was built on a lie. The first species did not choose to submit. They were conquered and their history was rewritten. The revelation caused chaos in the Galactic Assembly. Representatives from dozens of species demanded answers. The Hegemony Council tried to dismiss the documents as forgeries, but experts verified them quickly. They were real. Species that had submitted peacefully generations ago felt betrayed. They had believed the Dominion Accord was an agreement between civilizations. Now they learned it was a system of control established through violence and deception. A coalition formed rapidly. They called themselves the Free Species Alliance. It started with the 12 species who sent volunteers to Sol. Within weeks it grew to include representatives from 30 different civilizations. They had one demand: abolish the surrender protocol and create a new system based on voluntary cooperation. The Hegemony Council fractured. Some members, led by Counselor Pellara of the Nithian Concord, supported reform. They saw that the old system was dying. Better to change it gradually than watch it collapse violently. But hardliners, led by Counselor Vorketh, refused any compromise. They threatened military action against the alliance. Ambassador Jin Woo worked day and night to prevent civil war. He met with moderates from both sides. He proposed a middle path. The hegemony could continue to exist, but only as one organization among many, not as supreme authority. The surrender protocol would end. All relationships between species would be based on treaties between equals. The negotiations lasted 4 months. They were difficult and often broke down. Species had different visions for the future. Some wanted complete independence. Others feared chaos without some central authority. Trust was hard to build after 12,000 years of domination. Dr. Hannah Park played a crucial role. She helped species understand that freedom did not mean isolation. They could cooperate voluntarily. They could form alliances and partnerships. But these had to be chosen, not imposed. She also worked on something equally important: cultural restoration. Many species had lost their original identities under hegemony rule. She helped establish programs to recover lost languages, art forms, and traditions. It was slow work. 3 generations of assimilation could not be undone quickly. But even small progress gave people hope. Finally, after months of debate, a document was drafted. The Accords of New Harmony. It officially dissolved the Dominion Accord. The Hegemony Council was reformed as the Cooperative Council. Every species would have representation. Decisions would require consensus, not commands from above. Humanity earned a permanent seat on the new council, not because they were powerful, but because they had proven something important. They showed that resistance was possible, that freedom was worth fighting for. Their sacrifice had changed the galaxy. The signing ceremony was held on Earth. Representatives from 78 species attended. They stood in the ruins of cities damaged during the battle. They saw the memorials to the fallen. They understood the cost of freedom, but not everyone accepted the new order. Councillor Vorketh and his faction refused to sign. They represented species who still believed in the old system. They retreated to the Galactic Rim with their military forces. 12 star systems followed them. Vorketh sent a message to the new Cooperative Council. His words were defiant. "You have chosen chaos over order. You will regret this." The Dominion Accord maintained peace for 12,000 years. Without it, you will tear yourselves apart. We will wait. And when you beg for the old stability, we will restore it. Ambassador Jinwoo replied calmly. Perhaps we will struggle. Perhaps freedom will be messy and difficult, but we would rather face those challenges than live under comfortable tyranny. You are welcome to return when you understand that. The ceremony concluded with a moment of silence. They honored all who died in the war. Humans and aliens both, even hegemony soldiers who were following orders. War had no winners, only survivors and lessons. Dr. Hannah Park spoke the final words. We are not celebrating victory today. We are mourning loss and embracing responsibility. Freedom is not a gift. It is a burden we must carry together. It requires constant effort and courage, but it is the only way to truly live. The Accords of New Harmony were signed. The old galaxy died. A new one, uncertain but free, was born. And somewhere in the darkness, Vorketh's fleet waited for its chance to return. 5 years passed after the battle for Sol. The galaxy was different now, free but struggling to learn what freedom meant. The Free Species Alliance had grown to 78 civilizations. The new Cooperative Council worked to establish fair trade systems, common laws, and mutual defense agreements. It was messy work. Species that had forgotten how to make their own decisions now had to learn again. Debates were long and often frustrating. Progress was slow. Dr. Hannah Park served as humanity's representative on the council. She spent most of her time helping other species rediscover their lost cultures. She established cultural exchange programs and funded historical research. She helped Velthari scholars recover ancient languages. She supported Thorian artists who wanted to create works in old traditional styles. The work was harder than fighting the war. Cultural identity could not be restored with weapons or tactics. It required patience and persistence. 3 generations of hegemony assimilation had erased much, but small victories brought hope. A Nethian philosopher published a book questioning authority and tradition. A Thorian youth movement demanded their elders teach them pre-hegemony customs. Change was happening. Ambassador Jinwoo Lee focused on diplomacy with hegemony loyalists. Many of Vorketh's faction had surrendered peacefully over the years. They were tired of isolation. They wanted to rejoin the galaxy. Jinwoo worked to integrate them back into the cooperative system. It required forgiveness from both sides. That was not easy, but it was necessary. But Vorketh himself remained defiant. He still commanded 12 star systems in the Galactic Rim. His faction called themselves the True Hegemony. They insisted the Dominion Accord was right and necessary. They believed the new galaxy would collapse into war and chaos. They waited for that collapse so they could restore the old order. Earth rebuilt slowly. The scars of battle were visible everywhere. Craters marked where missiles struck cities. Memorials stood in place of destroyed buildings. The largest memorial was in New Geneva, where the council had met during the war. It listed every human who died in the conflict. Over 8 million names. At the top of the memorial were special places for Admiral Daewon Kim and Commander Tae-young Choi. Their names were carved larger than the others. Below them was an inscription. They chose freedom. Let the galaxy never forget. Humanity continued expanding, but differently now. They were not alone anymore. Human colonies were built alongside Velthari settlements and Nithian research stations. Species that once only knew each other through hegemony bureaucracy now lived as neighbors. It was not always smooth. Cultural differences caused misunderstandings, but they learned to work through problems together. One day, a young Thorian student named Ren Li visited Earth. She was writing her university thesis about humanity's refusal of the surrender protocol. She wanted to understand what made humans different, why they refused when nobody else did for 12,000 years. She requested an interview with Dr. Hannah Park. They met in a small office overlooking the memorial in New Geneva. Renly was nervous but determined. She had prepared her questions carefully. Dr. Park, everyone in the galaxy asks this question. What made humans special? What allowed you to refuse when no one else could? Were you braver, stronger, more stubborn? Hannah smiled gently. She looked out at the memorial, at the 8 million names carved in stone. She thought about Daewon's final broadcast, about Tae-yang's sacrifice, about Jinwoo's tireless diplomacy, about Kalseth's courage to switch sides, about billions of humans who risked everything for an idea they might never see realized. We were not special, Hannah said quietly. We were not braver or stronger. We simply remembered something the galaxy had forgotten. Every species has the capacity for courage, for resistance, for freedom. You did not lack these qualities. You were taught to forget them over 12,000 years. She turned to look at Renly directly. The hegemony's greatest trick was making submission seem inevitable. They made you believe resistance was impossible. They made you think freedom was not worth the cost. We just refused to believe that lie, and once we showed it was possible to refuse, others found their courage too. Your people sent volunteer ships to Sol. That took just as much bravery as anything humans did. Renly was quiet for a long moment. Then she asked her final question. Was it worth it? 8 million dead. Entire colonies destroyed. Decades of rebuilding ahead. Was freedom worth that price? Hannah did not answer immediately. The question deserved serious thought. She looked at the memorial again. So many names. So much loss. Ask me that question in another 100 years. Ask the children being born today in the free galaxy. They will grow up able to choose their own paths. They will create art and music that their ancestors could not. They will think thoughts their grandparents were forbidden to consider. Ask them if freedom was worth the price their ancestors paid. Renly finished her thesis and published it 6 months later. It became a bestseller across the galaxy. Young people from dozens of species read it and felt inspired. They began asking harder questions, challenging old assumptions, demanding better futures. The old hegemony was gone, but its shadow remained. Many species still struggled with the transition to freedom. Some wanted the old certainty back. The galaxy was messy and chaotic and uncertain, but it was also alive in a way it had not been for 12,000 years. Artists created bold new works. Scientists pursued research the hegemony would have forbidden. Philosophers wrote books questioning everything. Children learned to think for themselves rather than memorize approved answers. The future was uncertain. Vorkath still waited in the darkness. New challenges would come. Freedom was fragile and required constant defense. But for the first time in 12,000 years, the galaxy belonged to those who lived in it, not to masters or councils or protocols, to ordinary people making their own choices, their own mistakes, and their own triumphs. The inscription on Earth's memorial said it best. At the very bottom, below all the names, were words meant for every generation to come. The universe does not grant freedom. You must take it. You must defend it. You must never, ever surrender it. The stars looked calm that night. Earth spun quietly in its corner of the galaxy, unaware of the danger coming toward it. Millions of people slept in their beds. Children dreamed. Parents worked late shifts. Everything seemed normal, but far away at the edge of the solar system, space began to tear open. The darkness split apart like someone ripping fabric. Through the tears came ships. Big ships. Huge ships. Ships so large they could swallow cities whole. 847 warships appeared in the void. They belonged to the Valtros Imperium, an empire that ruled over 3,000 worlds. For 1,000 years they had conquered planet after planet. They had never lost a battle. They had never met anyone strong enough to stop them. Fleet Admiral Kraventhos stood on the bridge of his command ship. He was tall and covered in dark scales. His eyes glowed red in the dim light. He looked at the small blue planet ahead and smiled. Another easy victory, another primitive world to add to his empire. Scan the planet, he ordered his crew. The scan came back quickly. Radio waves. Television signals. Simple satellite communications. The aliens living on this world were clearly weak. They barely had any technology. They would surrender within hours. Send them our message, Kraventhos said. Down on Earth, alarms started screaming. Every military base on the planet lit up at once. Radar screens showed impossible readings. Hundreds of massive objects had just appeared near Saturn. Commander Hyunwoo jumped from his chair at NORAD headquarters deep inside a mountain. His hands shook as he looked at his screens. This couldn't be real. But the computers never lied. Get me the president, he shouted, now! High above Earth, Captain G1 floated in the control room of an orbital defense station. She had been drinking coffee and watching the stars. Now her coffee floated forgotten in the air beside her. Her screen showed the alien fleet clearly. Contact all stations, she said to her crew. Her voice stayed calm even though her heart raced. Tell them we have visitors. Unfriendly visitors. In Geneva, Director Minho ran down the hallway of the Global Defense Initiative. His phone rang nonstop. Every country on Earth was calling at once. Everyone wanted answers. Everyone wanted to know what to do. The alien message came through on every frequency. It was translated badly, pieced together from old TV shows and radio broadcasts they had intercepted. Primitive species, the message said. You will surrender. Resistance is extinction. President Soman stood in the emergency meeting room. Leaders from every nation appeared on screens around her. Some looked scared. Some looked angry. She looked neither. She looked sad. They think we're weak, she said quietly. They think we can't fight back. An old general spoke up. Maybe we should tell them the truth, Madam President. Show them what we really are. Soman shook her head. We've hidden for 200 years. We stayed quiet to avoid this exact situation. But now they found us anyway. She took a deep breath. Send the response protocol. Tell them what humanity really is. And may whatever gods they believe in have mercy on them. The alien fleet began moving toward Earth. Kraventhos watched his tactical display with satisfaction. The primitive planet had sent some small ships to meet them. Tiny things, barely bigger than shuttles. He almost laughed. Ignore those toys, he told his weapons officer. Prepare the bombardment cannons. We'll burn their biggest cities first. Make them watch. Make them understand they never had a chance. But deep in space, between the alien fleet and Earth, something was happening. The small ships weren't running away. They were getting into position. And they weren't ships at all. Captain Jiho felt her consciousness spread through her fighter craft. She had no body anymore. She had given it up years ago. Now she was the ship. The ship was her. Her thoughts moved at the speed of light through quantum computers. Around her, 100 other pilots did the same. They were humanity's first line of defense. They were also humanity's deadliest weapon. All units, Jiho transmitted. Target lock confirmed. Weapons are hot. On my mark. Admiral Dehan watched from the flagship far behind them. His massive ship hung in space like a floating city. Because it was a city, 50 kilometers of advanced technology that the aliens couldn't even imagine. This is going to be over quickly, said Commander Yuna beside him. Yes, Dehan agreed. For them, it will be over very quickly indeed. The alien fleet kept coming. They had no idea what was about to hit them. They thought they were predators hunting prey. They didn't know that humanity was something much worse. Much more dangerous. Humanity was a predator pretending to be prey. And they had been pretending for a very long time.